Have you ever stopped, really stopped, to ask yourself why some women choose to live alone? No boyfriend. No partner. Not even the slightest sign they are searching. It's not loneliness. It's not heartbreak. And it's definitely not because there are no options. No. It's something deeper. Something darker. Something that challenges everything we were taught about what a woman should be. Because when a woman chooses solitude, she's not disappearing. She's awakening. And that kind of awakening? It doesn't need validation. It doesn't chase attention. It happens in silence. In strength. And in a kind of freedom that most people are too afraid to even imagine. She's not lonely, she's discerning. She's not cold, she's done burning for people who only came to steal her fire. There is something undeniably powerful and terrifying about a woman who doesn't need to be saved. Because she breaks the system. She dismantles the myth that women are incomplete without love. She exposes a truth that many run from. Most men don't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need them. And most women are still learning how to stand in that truth without flinching. Carl Jung once said, "What you deny in yourself becomes part of your shadow." And these women? They are the shadow. A reflection of what society represses. What many admire, but few dare to become. They don't beg for love. They embody choice. They don't perform for attention. They withdraw to protect their peace. They are not chasing fairy tales. They are writing their own stories. And that is unsettling. Because in a world that demands urgency to couple up, these women have found power in standing still. In being with themselves. So the next time you see a woman who lives alone, don't pity her. Don't try to define her. She's not broken. She's not lost. She's just playing a game that few even know exists. Where nothing is begged for. Everything is chosen. And presence is more powerful than approval. Why she chose to be alone, and why that changes everything. Most people look at her and see absence. But they are wrong. Behind the silence, behind the stillness, is a presence that disrupts, that expands, that challenges the emotional rules we've all been told to follow. She doesn't want just any love. She wants the kind that doesn't shrink her. That doesn't dim her light just so someone else can shine. And until that love arrives, if it ever does, she stands tall. Unafraid. Whole. You might not get it. You might call it pride, ego, trauma dressed up in independence. But deep inside, where even your loudest thoughts can't drown it out, there's a whisper. A question. What if the path she chose is the only one that leads to real love? Not the love we chase, but the one we become. Because the silence around a woman who chooses to be alone is not a void. It's a sanctuary. A sacred space built not to shut others out, but to stop losing herself in the process of being loved. Carl Jung once said, "What we don't face in ourselves, we project onto others." And maybe that's why solitude feels so threatening. Why women fear it. Why society mocks it. Because it reveals everything we haven't dared to confront. But this woman did. She turned inward. She looked into the dark corners of her soul, where ghosts waited. Childhood wounds. Abandonments never spoken. Loves that only knew how to take. Her solitude wasn't born from pain. It was born from healing. She didn't give up on love. She gave up on calling pain love. She stopped making herself smaller just to be held. She knows chaos. She's tasted heartbreak that left her hollow. She's given too much. Begged for love that came in crumbs. And then? She woke up. Not all at once. But moment by moment. Disappointment by disappointment. Until the ache turned into awareness. What you see now. It's not coldness. It's emotional clarity. And that kind of maturity is terrifying. Because it doesn't settle. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't perform. She doesn't want company. She wants connection. Not empty promises. But real presence. So yes. She may seem unreachable. But only to those who can't see her. Because she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen. And that takes more than charm. It takes the kind of courage most never find. The woman who walks alone, and why that terrifies the world. This is where most give up. Not because she's too much. But because she's too complete. When a woman becomes whole, the world splits in two. Admiration. And fear. Admiration from those who seek that same wholeness. Fear from those still living in pieces. Waiting for someone else to make them feel enough. She's not here to complete anyone. She wants to overflow. Beside someone who has also met themselves in the dark. And walked out whole. Until then. She walks alone. Not by accident. By devotion to her soul. She's not hiding. She's preserving. And yes, there's a vast difference. But the world doesn't like women like her. A world that still sells fairytales with only one ending. Together. A world that looks at single women as unfinished stories. As if solitude were a flaw instead of a choice. Carl Jung once said, "Where convention rules, authenticity dies." And this woman? She doesn't live by rules. She lives by essence. She hears it all. You're too picky. Maybe your standards are too high. No one's perfect. She smiles. That calm, steady, ironic smile. Because she knows the truth. What they call picky is what she should have expected all along. She's not seeking perfection. She's seeking maturity. Someone who's done the inner work. Because she already has. Let's be honest. That's not found on every corner. The discomfort she stirs? It's not in her words. It's in what she represents. Proof that you can be happy without someone else holding your hand. And that truth, it tears masks off. Men who thrive on insecurity, threatened. Women still chasing approval, conflicted. But she's not here to provoke. She's just being. And that authenticity? It's a mirror many can't bear to look into. She doesn't rush. She's not here to meet expectations. She respects her own timing. While the world screams, faster. Now. Be with someone. Be seen. She whispers, I choose peace. She wants depth, while the world wants distraction. She wants presence, while the world offers availability. She wants soul bonds, while others chase stories. And when she says no, it's not a strategy. It's clarity. When she walks away, it's not a scene. It's self-respect. When she stays home, instead of wasting her time on someone hollow, it's not arrogance. It's alignment. Her clarity, earned through pain, silence, and surrender, is her rebellion. She doesn't live to please. She lives to be. And that simple act? That's her revolution. Because what unsettles people most about her isn't her solitude, it's her peace. Carl Jung once said, "Those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken." And she did. She stripped off every mask, faced every ghost, rebuilt herself, piece by piece. She no longer needs others to tell her who she is. She sees herself clearly, fully. And that changes everything. How many times have you wondered if being alone means failure or freedom? How often have you felt the pressure to explain yourself, to justify your solitude? So did she. She once thought something was wrong with her too. Until she realized, there's nothing wrong with walking alone. What's wrong is pretending you're happy just to be seen holding someone's hand. The woman who broke and was reborn whole. One day, she realized something that changed everything. It's better to be alone than to feel invisible beside someone. And that day, she made a silent pact with herself. A vow whispered not in defiance, but in truth. Never again would she accept less than what her soul was born to receive. Her path hasn't been straight. There have been days of doubt, nights that swallowed her whole, moments when nostalgia gripped her throat. But beneath it all, a quiet strength keeps rising. With every choice made in awareness, she grows. She's learned. Real love doesn't cage. It doesn't consume. It doesn't manipulate. The love she longs for? It's the kind that liberates, that uplifts, that lets her breathe deeper, not smaller. And until that love appears, she chooses her own growth. Not out of pride, but out of integrity. This woman is individuation made flesh. She shattered, faced her shadow, descended into the unconscious, and returned not broken, but whole. Now that she truly sees herself, she refuses to ever be half of anything again. She doesn't want completion. She wants companionship in consciousness. But that scares people, because it demands emotional responsibility. And most still love out of fear, out of need, out of possession. If she walks alone today, it's because each step echoes with wisdom. Every no is an act of self-respect. Every absence she chooses is a reminder. Love should never be begged. She owes no explanations. And from the depths of that certainty, everything shifts. Because a woman who's met herself at her lowest becomes untouchable. Not because of how loud she is, but because of how clear. The woman who lives alone now is not the same woman who once begged to be seen. Something broke inside her, and that break was her freedom. Sometimes only through collapse does the soul find its true shape. Jung said, "The tree that reaches heaven must send roots into hell." And that's exactly what she did. She walked through the hell of her lineage, facing inherited pain, ancestral silence, trauma that wasn't just hers, but the echo of every woman who came before her. She broke the cycle. She said no to every repetition of the same toxic script. She stopped thinking it was her job to heal others, just to earn a love that was never whole. And when she stopped accepting less, the world whispered, "You wrong." But she stood tall. First with trembling hands, then with unwavering truth, and finally, with a kind of invulnerability that only comes from walking through your own fire. She no longer fears absence. She's learned to feed herself with silence, to warm herself with her own presence. She's not cold. She's sovereign. There's a world of difference between opening your heart and handing over your soul. Yes, she still opens, but only for those who arrive in truth. Not with poetry rehearsed in mirrors. Not with promises that vanish by morning. Her intuition is sharp now. Her energy? A filter. She can feel the hollowness in a handshake. And she walks away, without guilt. Because her transformation was never surface level. It was archetypal. Primordial. She tapped into something ancient. A memory buried deep in the collective feminine. That women weren't born to serve, but to express. Not to be shaped, but to overflow. And when that memory awakened, so did something wild in her. A woman who listens to her intuition. Who claims her emotions without apology. A woman who, even alone, is never lost. Because she's walking with destiny. Try to label her cold, too much, too intense. None of it sticks. Because she no longer exists to fit in. She exists to expand. She no longer chases attention. She radiates presence. She's not waiting to be chosen. She is the chooser. And that reversal? It shakes the foundations of every system that once tried to tame her. But she's not there anymore. She's already crossed the threshold. And on the other side, she discovered something sacred. The real relationship only begins when you've loved yourself deeply enough to never need anyone to complete you. There's something holy about how she walks through the world now. She doesn't need applause. She doesn't seek validation. Her confidence is quiet. But make no mistake, it is in that silence that her true power lives. The woman who became her own truth. Carl Jung once said, "What we do not face within becomes our fate." And perhaps that is why this woman, in choosing herself again and again, has become the silent architect of a destiny few will ever understand, but many will secretly envy. She no longer fills voids with promises. She no longer pleads for love or asks for space in someone else's life. Because she's learned, presence should never be begged. It should be invited. And when the invitation lacks truth, she simply declines. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But with the quiet dignity of someone who has gotten lost too many times to enter the same maze again. What most fail to see is that she still longs for love. To be held. To be chosen. But not at the cost of herself. She spent too long trying to fit into molds that were too small for the soul she carries. Now, she offers herself only where there's room to be whole. That kind of love requires more than romance. It requires awareness. The kind born from shadow work. From standing alone in the dark. And still choosing to love without losing oneself. She no longer dreams of fairy tales. She seeks something older, deeper. A soul alliance. Where no one dominates. No one submits. Where both rise. Without shrinking. Without silencing pain. Without dimming the brilliance of who they are. If that's too much for some, so be it. She would rather wait in silence than starve on emotional crumbs. To many, that sounds like arrogance. It isn't. It's self-love. in its most radical form. We are witnessing a new archetype of woman, one who has left behind the surface and descended into depth. She grew tired of being desired and chose instead to be respected. She chose solitude, not because she gave up on love, but because she discovered real love never asks you to abandon yourself. And once a woman knows that, everything changes. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence shifts the air. This isn't mysticism. It's energy. It's the silent weight of someone who's fought inner wars and returned, not victorious, but at peace. Not because the fear disappeared, but because she stopped letting it lead. Jung would say, she found wholeness not by destroying her darkness, but by integrating it. This woman no longer rejects love, but she no longer submits to unbalanced connection. She longs for love, but the kind that doesn't require editing her essence. She is both shadow and light, silence and storm, laughter and ache. And she knows now, those who only love the soft have never understood what love really is. Those who demand constant sweetness still fear the bitter medicine that grows the soul. She's too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept cages disguised as care, too sensitive to survive in shallow waters, but strong enough to walk the deep path, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. Because that is the journey of an awakened soul, choosing truth over comfort. And the world? It fears women like her. Women who don't need. Women who don't bow. Women who refuse to be molded. Because they challenge the structures we pretend are natural. They break silent emotional contracts that once whispered, a woman's worth is in being claimed. But she has torn those scripts apart. And in doing so, she lights the way, not just for herself, but for every woman watching. That, to the system, is dangerously revolutionary. So she continues, sometimes with tears, sometimes with quiet defiance, but always with her feet on the ground. Because now, she is never truly alone. She is with herself. And after all she's lived through, that is more than enough. The love that comes after this will not be salvation. It will be celebration. It will not come to fix her. It will come to meet her. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world rushes to tell her she's making a mistake. But deep down, she feels something sacred aligning. It isn't pride. It isn't rebellion. It's the quiet, ancient wisdom that only grows in silence. The same wisdom Jung called individuation, the becoming of the self, without masks, without compromise. And when that happens, no voice outside her has more power than the truth rising in her chest. That truth doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply closes the door, quietly, without resentment, and walks on. The woman who chose herself, in the way she quietly withdraws when the world no longer nourishes her, in the way she smiles peacefully, even with no one beside her, because she discovered being alone is not a punishment. It is a vow of loyalty to her own soul. And the soul of an awakened woman does not submit. It does not dim. It does not beg. It simply is. And that is enough. The world will keep whispering that she is missing something. It will offer her distractions, plastic princes, love built for display. But she has already seen behind the curtain. She has already understood. It's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. And when that truth settles in, everything changes. Desire becomes discernment. Lack becomes choice. Waiting becomes a path. What once hurt now teaches. What once bound now frees. You can feel it. That stirring deep inside. A flicker. A spark. Maybe it's a memory. An old wound. A longing that never made sense. Or maybe it's the reflection of a woman you once knew. Or the woman you are slowly becoming. In either case, something within you is rising. Something that no longer fits old shapes. Something that, if you let it, could change everything. How you love. How you connect. How you live with yourself. That woman who walks alone is not broken. She is not lost. She is a living symbol of emotional freedom. A quiet revolution in a world obsessed with belonging. She doesn't walk ahead of anyone. And she doesn't follow. She carves her own way. Unique, inviolable. And along the way, she leaves small fires burning. Signals for others who are beginning to wake up too. So if something inside you stirred, if a voice, long quiet, suddenly rose, perhaps it's because you're ready for a new kind of love. A love that begins with reconciliation with yourself. A love that thrives on silence, presence, and truth. A love that cannot be negotiated, cannot be begged for, and refuses to wear a mask. And if that love hasn't come yet, maybe it's because you were meant to become the woman who no longer accepts less than she deserves. And if this message found you at the right moment, if it reminded you of who you are, or who you are becoming, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with the women who are ready to remember, who are tired of forgetting. And if you feel called, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Not out of habit, but out of choice. Because when something touches the soul, the least we can do is let it keep resonating within us and through us.